Hello and welcome to Learn English with me, Dadzie. Today we are discussing how best we can analyze or discuss a literary test. Some basic tricks to consider, and it works basically for most teachers when it comes to literary test. Before we move on to today's discussion, kindly follow our social media handles. Our Facebook, we go by the name Learn English with Miss Dadzie, and YouTube, as you are seeing right now, is Learn English with Miss Dadzie. We encourage you all to subscribe and like these pages to be abreast with updates with regards to the English language. Our objectives for today's lesson. By the end of the lesson, you will be able to plan a literature lesson, apply a variety of techniques to teaching and discussing literature in English test, have a productive lesson. Teaching literature in English test. The first thing you have to consider is the pre-planning stage, that is before teaching a literature test. Read the test thoroughly. Before you even consider planning a literature lesson, you must what? Read the test thoroughly. It can be once, it can be twice, it can be thrice, but until you are able to understand the whole concept or ideas or events being talked about in the book, you can't go ahead to teach the lesson or teach the topic and have a successful one. The second thing is planning. You consider the class size and how to make the class interesting for all, be it slow learners or fast readers or learners. Also consider fast learners and slow learners. That is it. So you consider slow readers or fast readers, and then you also consider fast learners and slow learners whilst you plan the lesson. This is because the literature in English test or classroom setting requires that students participate in the reading activity. The next one is the reading activity itself. As much as possible, make sure 90% of the learners in the class read during the lesson. This is how you are able to get their attention, get them involved, and one way or the other, arouse their interest in the lesson. The last part is the post-reading activity. I always encourage that you let learners summarize, reflect, or answer questions about the test read in class. Also consider tasks that can help prepare learners for WASI, especially the major and minor details should be considered. Usually what happens is that after every test, be it a chapter, an act, a scene, whatever form of literature or poem that you have treated, you let them summarize it in their own words, whether through an oral form, whether written, whichever way possible. But make sure that you have discussed it with them thoroughly, and you should be the passive participant in the lesson. Let them talk, and you probably give constructive criticisms to whatever they say, but you can't rub off whatever they say. You should just encourage them to talk and express themselves, because it is through this that you are able to arouse their interest and encourage them to enjoy the literature lesson. Now, the planning stage. If possible, always start with the recommended African text, be it for the drama or prose aspect of literature. This is usually for the African teacher, the traditional African literature in English teacher. Because these African texts are relatable, or they can easily relate to some of the issues raised in it, it is advisable that you start with that so that they can easily associate or identify themselves with certain events in the book, and this makes the lesson interesting for them. Also, read the book well and analyze key areas or events learners can easily identify with and build on it. Like I said, because you have read the book thoroughly, you know events or happenings in the book that learners at that level can easily identify it, be it social issues, economic issues, or religious issues that has been raised in the book. So you base on that, and you draw learners' attention to what the book talks about, and as a whole, what or how they can best understand it. Before reading the books with learners, use guided questions, emphasis on guided questions, discussion or presentation method to prepare learners' mind for the test by allowing them share their opinions on the key areas they can identify with in the test to be read in class. And these key areas have already been identified by you as a teacher. So the only thing you have to do is what you use guided questions, discussion or presentation method to get them involved. So when they are able to discuss or talk about some of these things, identifying them in the test and understanding it becomes easier. Let's look at the reading stage. Allow learners read at their own pace when you start the reading activity. That is the first 2-3 lessons, and if possible, for the remaining lessons, you can also do this if you have a lot of time available, because you consider them to be what? Fresh readers. And because you want the best out of the lesson, it's advisable that what? You let them read at their pace, and gradually you figure out how best to improve these skills. Read a chapter per lesson or week depending on the time dedicated for the lesson. It can be a chapter, half of a chapter. It can be an act or a scene. It can be some lines or stanza in the poetry. That is it. Just identify and set a target for yourself, achievable ones at that. And make sure that what? They get the best out of it, because you don't have a lot of time to read the book twice before they go and write their WASI exam. So when you are treating it, you treat it with all seriousness and identify and discuss most important issues. Ask critical questions as they read, as and when needed. Whenever you come across a major point that you think is important and you should draw learners' attention to, especially with regards to character development, setting, plots, and literary devices that have been adapted by the writer. The prose reading stage. Discuss the entire lesson with learners. All the things that has been discussed during the lesson, now you let them summarize it in their own words, so that you have a feel of their level of understanding of what they have actually benefited from the entire lesson. Learners to summarize every chapter in their own words in the activity book. Every chapter, every stanza or poem that has been discussed, or every act or scene that has been discussed in class. After you have had that kind of oral interaction with them immediately after the class, it is encouraged that you allow them to also summarize in their activity book, so that they can easily make reference to it in future. Assess their level of understanding, preferably through written test. During a literature examination, they don't have an oral test. It's usually written. So it's advisable that as you help them understand the book, because for this part of the world, we usually focus on summative assessment, it is advisable that you help them improve their writing skills, as that is the only medium or way that they are going to present their exams, or they are going to use in writing their WASI exams. Thanks for watching. Kindly follow us on Facebook at Learn English with Miss Dadzie. Also, we will plead that you follow our lifestyle or fashion pages on Facebook as well at Address Collection and Feldad Couture. Do have a lovely day, and we hope that this helps you a lot. Hello and welcome.